Welcome to the podcast. Chris Graham here on Augusta Free Press, and we're going to talk with Jena Crisler. She is a candidate, the Democratic nominee for House District 35, which, man, this is like my neck of the woods. It's Augusta County, Rockingham County, Highland County, Bath County, part of Augusta. I mean, just it's the rural part of the area that we all love to live in here. And Jena, just want to say thank you for being on the podcast with us here. We want to get to know you a little bit. Welcome to the show.
I'm very excited to be here. I want you all to know me. I assume that most people are my friends. They kind of just don't know it yet.
Okay, that's a great attitude to have. Now let's start with you live in Port Republic. You and I were chatting before I hit record. You and your husband are city folks who have become over the past nearly 20 years more and more country folks. Talk about, you decide to move to Port Republic all these years ago. How did you end up in Port Republic of all places?
Well, the interesting story. I trained in Baltimore at a Johns Hopkins program in internal medicine at Sinai Hospital. I met my husband when I was an intern. I was a 35-year-old intern. I went back to medical school later in life, and that's a kind of an interesting story too.
Mhm.
I met him at an Elvis impersonator party. He looked like Buddy Holly. And so he stuck around for the wild ride that is residency, pure exhaustion and mania. And we ended up getting married. And I took a few short-term jobs, and this was my second job, was at Rockingham Memorial. And I kept coming back and forth, and they said, please, please, please sign a contract. And finally I did. And I still commuted from Baltimore. I would come down with my little suitcase. I am in a specialty, which is known as a hospitalist. And in 2003, that was a brand new specialty. You used to have your primary doc that people think of as a general practitioner, which is now more like a family practice doctor, would take care of you outpatient, and then when you were in the hospital, inpatient. But because we can do so much more as an outpatient, and you have to be pretty darn sick to get into a hospital as an inpatient now, that the general practitioner became a dinosaur of the past. You had your outpatient clinics with family practice and internal medicine, and you had your hospitalist, and that's where I came in. Once you got through the emergency room doctor triaged you, stabilized you, but felt you needed more care that could be accomplished at that point in time. They would call me or one of my team members. And we would come down and we would take over the care of the patient, and we would see the patient through the entire hospitalization, calling any specialist that we needed. So I came here in 2003 and did my weeklies, and my husband finally said, why don't we move to where your job is? And I said, because we are city people. I grew up in the Maryland, D.C. burbs. My husband is from Baltimore. And as I said, he didn't even know that vegetables didn't come out of cans until he was 23. Now, we come down and we buy one of these great big white elephants right next to the river. Sometimes we're in the river. And most everybody has an internal monologue, like maybe a musical soundtrack. The one going on around here is Green Acres is the place to be.
I missed it. Green Acres was on the local Me TV channel for the last couple of years, but it's now off. And I grew up watching. Yeah, that song it has been ingrained in my head at different times in my life. And Port Republic is a beautiful part of the count, Rockingham County, the Shenandoah Valley. I grew up in Cremora, not too far south from there. You mentioned you're right along the river. You've got great views of, especially towards the east, the Blue Ridge there. Because you're far enough out. When I grew up in Cremora, I was right under the mountain, so it was kind of like looking up at the mountain. But you're a few miles back, so you got those, the vistas. So I'm sure some mornings there's some fog maybe off the mountains there. Um, what's so you sometimes you say you're in the river. What you it look recreation wise? I mean, do you guys get in the river? Do you kayak? Do you take advantage of that proximity?
It's very exciting down here. We started out inner tubing and then we graduated quickly to kayaks. And we have a flotilla so that when we do have friends who can come down and visit or come over, sure, we can put you in a kayak. And we have a wonderful neighborhood in Port Republic. I can pretty much run in and out of anyone's house and borrow whatever I need, including kayaks or a cup of sugar. It depends. And that's such a wonderful thing because I do get the first calls often when people are in trouble. And I can say, no, you don't have to run off to the ER, or yes, please call 911 and I will be right over. So we are about 8 miles from the hospital here. But in Port Republic, we go kayaking because we're on this beautiful part of the river and can just catch up with we're at the headwaters of the South Fork of the Shenandoah. And then we can just go on down. We can get out at Linwood, which is a 3-mile trip, depending on how fast the river's traveling, 45 minutes to an hour and a half, or you can go all the way down to Island Ford, which can be a 3-hour trip or a 7-hour trip, depending on how high the water is.
Your
So
commute to RMH is so nice. I mean, you're 8 miles, but you're probably also 8 to 10 minutes. Whereas when you where you grew up in the Baltimore D.C. area, oh my gosh, I can't imagine the commute you would have had even just for 8 miles. I'm sure it's so peaceful to be when you go into work, when you come home from work, to be able to drive that quiet drive home.
when you come home and you're going east and you see all the beautiful trees, the mountains, and then there's an amazing fog, or if the most beautiful, it brings you to tears, it's when there's ice on the trees.
Yeah, I've driven that road quite a bit over the years, having been in that area for the first 30 years or so of my life. We also share something else in common. We're both UVA alums. And I liked having read a little bit of your bio. How you ended up at UVA is neat too. Talk about, because your family background. I mean, you come from. I think you said your father was a rocket scientist. Your mother was an
What?
accountant. But then when it was time for you to head to college, it was a little challenging. Talk about your background in that respect.
It was challenging. I always thought that, I would head up north. I'd be at Harvard or Princeton. My mother actually wanted me to go to the Naval Academy, but I was too short anyway. I don't know if they still have height requirements, but when I'm on, you're short-staffed at 5 feet. So my dad was a rocket scientist, and then he ended up doing toxicology for the district. A really interesting story is in 1969, my older brother, John, was chewing on his pencil, and my dad was looking at that, and they were doing the lead program because they were trying to get lead out of paint and lead out of gasoline at the time. And he took my brother's pencil, which, it's graphite is what you mark with, but they tested the paint covering the number 2 pencil and realized that the lead content of that was enough to cause lead poisoning. So that was what he was famous for. And he used to drag us. He didn't drag us. We all went willingly. I was one of 4 children. And as my dad said, I should have drowned you with the rest of the litter. But so I am number 2 out of 4 and 3 brothers.
Mhm.
And I'm the alpha dog. And but we would go in to work with dad and we would take the bus downtown. It was very exciting. And he would put us in the hood of the laboratory, and we would get to melt these, those styrofoam peanuts with hydrochloric acid. A 6-year-old playing with hydrochloric acid. Anyway, we were there and he let me take that awful mess home. Finally, we disposed of it, but the things that we would do. And we were always trying to out-banana each other. I have a brother who's an engineer, a brother who's a computer geek, and another brother who's a contractor, very handy, and I'm a clinician. And if any of us came up with a good idea, it was like my dad would say, that's because I'm a research scientist, and or that's because I'm an engineer.
Yeah.
So out-banana. But my dad was forcibly retired when he was still relatively young. He was 59. And that was 19, I'm not going to even tell you. A long time ago. And we were panicked. My mother was substantially younger than my dad, and my dad was the primary breadwinner at that time. And I came home when I was about a junior in high school. That's when it happened. And she was smoking furiously because that's what they did. And I said, uh-oh. And she didn't rattle easily either. So she just looked at me and I said, what's going on? And she hissed, no one ever told me I would be the head of the household for a family of 6. I'm like, and that is when I knew that never would I find myself in financial crisis like my family plunged into.
Yeah. Yeah.
Luckily for me that they're always fiscally responsible. We had enough of a nest egg that we were able to regroup and recoup. And I was in the public high school, and my favorite French teacher, Mr. Anderson, always talked about UVA. He went to UVA, and he was such a fantastic teacher. And I, being from Southern Maryland and before computers, no one knew about these other schools. I thought it was another state university. And I applied to UVA and I got in and I came down and I'm like, wow.
Yeah, that's I so you graduate and then like you mentioned already that a lot of people I think we just presume doctors just come out of the womb as doctors and they went to college then they went to medical school. You had a few years in between and your few years in between seemed like they were interesting. You spent some time in France, I understand?
Oh, that's great. So what happened is, and here's what I want the point being is you shouldn't be held responsible for the rest of your life for every decision you made when you were 18. So, so I graduated. I didn't really know what I wanted to be. I always thought I would be a doctor, but I didn't quite commit. And so I rattled around DC for a while. I was an editorial assistant, and then I ended up writing direct mail, and I could not see a 40-year career in that. And I chose to regroup and recoup. I called my mother, and I said, moral courage, Mom. She goes, why? I'm quitting my job today, and I'm going to France to be a nanny. And she's like, who is this?
Yeah.
Chryslers do not quit their jobs. That is not something we do. We but I went to France, and always wanted to speak a foreign language, and I was a nanny for 2 different families. I ended up with a very wealthy family. One where the chateau was so big that I taught the children to rollerblade in the hallways.
Okay.
Yeah, it was the 90s. We all were rollerblading.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So they were extremely wonderful to me. My French became very good, never fluent, but quite competent. And then I came home, and my goal was to come home when I had clarity and decide what I was going to do when I grew up. Well, I was home for about a month, and my mom was tired of me hanging around and disrupting her life by painting walls and cleaning out closets, and she yelled at me again. What are you going to do with your life? I'm like, 3 days later, I come back, I want to be a doctor. And I did. I was ready to be a doctor, and I settled down. I relearned the chemistry I'd never learned properly at UVA by Dr. Frankly Scary, otherwise known as Dr. Frank Carey.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
Revisited the physics I had forgotten and started the biology I had never started yet. Took study for the MCATs, did reasonably well. Got all the applications in, got all the secondaries, was invited for a few the secondaries, and then interviews. And once I got into the interview, I got into 2 schools, one in Kansas City and one in Miami. And the boyfriend at the time, Mr. Right for now, but not Mr. Right forever, said, Miami, Kansas City, is there really a question? I'm like, yeah, that was. So I went to Miami. I went to a medical school called Nova Southeastern College of Osteopathic Medicine.
Mhm.
And I have to say, I absolutely loved it. I loved everything about being in medical school. I was a 30-year-old first-year student, so I knew how lucky we were. I got this education. I got in. So I was not actually the consumer of the education. I was the product. The government pays, helps you pay for the education. So they are looking for people who will finish the course. And I did. There was no way I wasn't going to finish. I loved, and I have all of my dearest friends. It was like going to boot camp. I still am constant texting with, we were a triad. I hear from them all the time in our careers. So I went to Miami and I loved family practice. I love knowing my patients. I want to hear their stories. That's where I love being the detective and figuring out what's going on and looking to, there's so many ways that your health can be improved. And it's not just medicine. There's lots and lots of social issues that you have to address and understand. But I came up to Baltimore because you got to do months away, and Sinai Hospital invited me to do a rotation at their hospital, and I was so fabulous. They chased me down in the hallway and offered me a contract. So I said I would love to join, and we worked so hard, so hard. My mother was very upset that I'd moved back to within 50 miles of them, and I never called. And I was like, Mom, you don't want me to call when I get home from work. And she said, yes, I do. Like, so the next 2 a.m. time I got home from work and I called her, she goes, okay, I get your point. Stop doing that.
So I think the folks who are tuned in here, whether they're listening or watching, we can sense your enthusiasm about anytime you have a challenge. You're like, okay, I'm going to go full bore into this. All right, now I'm going to start talking politics just to say what got you in what entered into your head to say I need to run for the House of Delegates. What talk about that thought process there.
Well, I'm part of the working class. I'm a highly educated worker bee, but I don't own any factories. And I have always been pro-union, pro-worker, and that everyone deserves to live at a certain level of comfort. I mean, we live in a very wealthy country. As you pointed out, I traveled. Yes, I traveled to France, but I've also traveled to South America, Central America, and Asia. And I have seen true poverty. When I was at Sinai, I was able to go on 2 different medical missions to Guatemala and could see what a 40-year civil war can do to you and why things are the way they are, and how the U.S. has affected politics in every single country on every single continent. So we come back to the U.S. having hot water 24/7, complete luxury. Never having your food spoil in a refrigerator, unbelievable. Always having shoes on your feet. And my dad was older than my mother. He grew up during the Depression in the Dust Bowl in Texas. And that was his ingrate speech. I could tell you right now, if we ever were not appreciative, and what kid is not, it was, you've got food on the table and shoes on your feet and a roof over your head. And I get up every morning at 5:30 to go to work. And I'm like, yeah. And I appreciate it. Retrospect, I'm so glad. So I came and I could see what was happening. I read Project 2025. I lived through the first administration of the current president, and I became activated. I went down to the Rockingham Democratic headquarters and said, put me to work. I said, I'll do anything. I don't want to be in charge. Ha, ha, ha. Put me to work. And I did. And then I did early elections, and I was able to meet all these amazing people who were also volunteering and others, and help educate them on issues that I was familiar with. And then I became more involved with the Democratic Committee, and I was chair of District 3, which is here in Rockingham County. And the next thing you know, I came under the focus of the committee designed to look for candidates for the House of Delegates. And it was getting very late in the day and nobody was stepping up. And they called me and I said, heck no. Yeah. And then I realized, yes, I do want to. I want to do everything I can to support my neighbors. And there is so much I can offer, because I can see that a lot of things that we are going to have a huge amount of trouble with if we don't nip them in the bud now. And we have already waited pretty late in the game. And there are things that are going to impact us in ways you can't even imagine. And that you could start with Medicaid and we could go on from there. But that is how I said, yes, I will. I will do everything I can. If I am angry at myself because I didn't do everything that I possibly could, that was not something I was willing to entertain. So I'm
That's
here and I'm running to win.
that's the attitude that you want more people. I want more people to have. I grew up. So when I mentioned I grew up in Cremora, I grew up in a trailer park in Cremora. And the Cremora area that I grew up in and have so many friends in and everything else votes 90% for Donald Trump and has consistently voted 80+% for Republicans since I've started tracking that when I was in elementary school there, 40 years ago. And what frustrates me the most is the first thing that has always jumped out at me is if we just had if and I say we, working class people just had access to reliable health insurance, reliable, consistent health care, that would change everybody's life. Everybody that I grew up with in the trailer park, their lives would change if they could just have consistent, reliable health care. Um, and they don't vote for that. That frustrates the heck out of me. And you work in the healthcare field, and now you mentioned we're going through these things with, I mean, the big ugly bill that I call it from July 4th that was signed by Donald Trump, cutting Medicaid by $1 trillion over the next 10 years. It's getting worse. I mean, we already we spend too much on healthcare in this country for the outcomes we get, and it's only going to get worse here if we allow this to continue.
Oh, I would love to address it. There's so many things to unpack here. One, we have the best healthcare system in the world. We have the biggest brains from all over the world. Everyone wants to come here to study and go into medicine. And the people that I worked with are unbelievable. There are a lot of easier ways to make a living. You do not go into medicine because you want to make a lot of money. And yes, you study hard and you work very hard and you are paid well, but you can do that if you are willing to trade your soul. And I wasn't. I was still using it. So,
Right. Yes.
so you come here and you are with the best and brightest and you learn. And so we have access to so many things, and how can we get them distributed equitably? And that's what insurance is. So if people have access to insurance, they will seek medical attention when it's appropriate, when it's a problem, and before it's a crisis. Because ultimately you pay on the front end or you pay on the back end, and paying on the back end is almost always so much more expensive, and it becomes devastating. You have that really weird, say, freckle, and it turns into something other. You would get that biopsied, investigated when it is still reasonable to just get rid of it. It was a melanoma, but it hasn't gone anywhere. If you don't have health care, you've got stage 4 melanoma, and you might as well not take out any more subscriptions.
Yeah.
Although that is changing too. This is the amazing thing. We are on the brink, I mean, the brink of one of the most amazing revolutions in medicine, almost as amazing, say, as antibiotics that were in the 30s and 40s, cardiac catheterizations in the 70s and 80s. With the research that's going on, we are finding out that so many viruses are causing so many mutations, which are causing the cancers. And if we get the vaccines against these viruses, then we can prevent cancer. We also have other things that are using similar technologies that are able to target the cancer cells and re-edit them to remove the replication of the cancerous cell, the tumor, and just go back to normal. And that is all these new technologies that are able to introduce vaccines. mRNA is right there. The research is amazing. So, to tell you, you remember HIV in the 80s? A death sentence. And it was not confined to just any one group, socioeconomic group.
Right.
Excuse me, someone is desperately trying to get a hold of us for reasons we're not clear. Are you there?
I'm still here. Oh yeah, I'm still here.
Yeah, someone's trying to get. It was my husband's phone that was ringing, and then they came to mine, and my husband had a medical emergency this week, and it required surgery, and he's fine, but it's going to be a long haul of recovery, and we are trying to tidy up all the loose ends on. Well, they're not loose. We're still hanging out in the wind, but if everything goes well, knock wood.
Yeah.
So,
Good luck with that. Yeah.
I was explaining to you, the revolution of medicine.
Yeah.
I'm so excited. When I first started my residency, multiple myeloma was a death sentence within 2 years, and it didn't matter when you caught it. If you caught it 4 years or you caught it 6 months, it depended on where it was. Now, it's not. It's not. You have a reasonable life expectancy. Cervical cancer caused devastation to women. It's caused by HPV, human papillomavirus. There is a vaccine, a very easily tolerated vaccine. You inoculate the children, and nobody passes it around. It's almost rarely proves to be a cancer in men. It quite often is a cancer in women, which, they're addressing with pap smears, regular checkups, removing precancerous cells. But now with the vaccine, it's a non-issue. You can get the vaccine for chicken pox. That's unbelievable. You think, oh, it's just chicken pox, but it isn't. I had a 38-year-old father of 3 come down with chicken pox. He came down with a rare form, pulmonary. You never see that, but he did, and he died.
People don't assume, and a frustrating thing. There's so many right now at the federal level. I mean, as we're recording this on September 5th, a day before we recorded this, the Health and Human Services Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. speaking before the Senate, having to defend being an anti-vaxxer. He's trying to do everything he can to kill the CDC, to kill mRNA vaccines when we're on the verge of all these breakthroughs that you're talking about. Now I know at the Virginia General Assembly level, maybe that's not something that the General Assembly can take
I think
lead
it
on,
is.
but yeah, I would agree. I mean, there's at the state level there are things we can do and things that you as a member of the General Assembly could do to move us in the right direction again.
Yeah, if the federal dollars are going to disappear, we need to find the Virginian dollars to to make sure that we have access, because as you pay on the back end.
Yeah.
What happens when it is like such a predictable situation? I wanted to share with you. Let me just let me see. There's the it's predictable. So if you don't have people who are insured, we talked about that. They don't seek medical help till you have the crisis, correct?
Yes.
Then you have the crisis. And then people who finally tried not to avoid the ER, but they go in and they're being floated away to the disappearing primary care. There's delays in care there that can be foreseen and interrupted. And then worst comes to worst, you're now in crisis, you go to the ER, and then you have these interminable waits. I went to school in Miami. I was at Jackson Memorial in Miami, where there was at least 12 different languages being spoken at all times. And people who are coming in, sick as stink, limbs hanging off, things that you could have prevented a long time ago. 2-day waits in the emergency room, you are triaged because you really do treat the most unstable first. So then you have all of that going on, and then with the law, and what people don't understand, shall I launch into Medicaid and Medicaid dollars?
Please, yeah, yeah. That's
Okay,
yeah, yeah.
I would love to.
Because we at the state level, we're gonna have to take it. We're gonna have to fill the gap being left by the feds.
Oh, and then what happens is the ACA, the American, the Affordable Care Act,
Mhm.
the act that gave insurance at least at a baseline level to everyone, that is supported by credits that are Medicaid dollars. You have to appreciate that those Medicaid dollars are funneled through a system called Cardinal Health. So when you go on the ACA and you check the program you want, and then you see what it would cost, and with the credits that you deserve from your financial statements, how much it would really cost you. So that was helpful through the Medicaid Expansion Act. And the Medicaid Expansion Act took people from poverty level, which for a single person is $16,150, or for a family of four was about $32,000, up to 138% of the poverty level. So it took that family four up to about $42,000. And the single person, I think it works out to be about $26,000. Well, if you're paying $1,000 a month in an insurance premium, and that's all the money you're making, you can't do it. And you're going to let it go as a luxury. It is not. It is a right. It should be a right. And those Medicaid dollars, there was a built-in trigger law. The trigger law was placed by the Republicans, and it said that if we ever lost even one single dollar of federal funding for the ACA, the entire system of credits would go away. And that
Mhm.
is estimated at 80 to 90% of the cost of those credits. That will completely disintegrate this amazing, well, it's not without its troubles. We know that. It's the best we could do at the time,
Right.
but it's better than nothing, I assure you. Because if you wanted a one trip to the ER where you're not kept, I mean, that could easily run you $5,000 to $10,000. A 1 week stay at the hospital, 50 to 100,000 easily. So most people are exactly one trip to the ER or one hospitalization away from bankruptcy and being on the streets.
Yeah.
You want me to tell you a nice little story about that?
Sure. I've got one to tell too, but yeah, go ahead.
Okay, I'm at RMH, and I have this delightful gentleman who's a veteran, a Vietnam vet, and he is homeless, and he's also a bilateral amputee,
Hmm.
and he is in an electric wheelchair. And he got homeless from one hospitalization where he couldn't make payments. And the next thing you know, he's out on the street. He's lost his apartment. He's lost everything. He has benefits. He's got his disability through Social Security. He's got his veterans benefits. He gets his VA care, but he doesn't have enough money to get a Section 8 voucher and therefore an apartment where he can afford it. And to compact it, there's so many social ills when you get yourself into this state because of a hospitalization. If you don't have a permanent address, you can't work with the governments. They have to have a physical address. We have in our town beautiful places. Our community place is one of them. That's one that they allow people who are otherwise homeless, unsheltered is the new word, but homeless, to have a post office box. So they have a physical address for which they can do business with and get the benefits that they deserve from having paid into the system at the cost of wherever their earnings took them, so that they can get the benefits. And that is why we have a government. It's not why our government is based on capitalism. It's not. It's to provide services that we all agree are worthwhile. I mean, we have infrastructure. We have beautiful roads, mostly without potholes. We have we have internet coverage for a lot of our citizenry, not necessarily in District 35, because broadband's another issue.
Right, right.
We have, generally speaking, safe places to live where we can depend on services like 911.
Mm-hmm.
It is unbelievable what we take for granted or can't appreciate enough how we got here. And I pay a lot of taxes, and I am happy to do that because I like the services that I get from this. So this poor gentleman is homeless, and if he gets in line with his Section 8 voucher to get an apartment with a roommate, he's in this line. And if a single bedroom apartment shows up that he has to get back out of that line and back in this line, and at the end, and he loses that place, and he's at the end of the line in this place. So there are bureaucratic disconnects that we can address that would make things so much easier. And you would see him about, and it broke your heart. This man who served in Vietnam, it was 2 tours, who had significant illnesses, including Agent Orange, and then that led on to other illnesses from PTSD and things like that. And you don't want to see that. It's so expensive when they can't catch a problem early.
I had a young cousin who was in a freak car accident. She was the only one injured, but it was a devastating brain injury as a result of this car accident. Now, her father worked for local government and had really good insurance on paper, at least. But the financial difficulties from her need for the cousin's need for continued care. I think she was 7 or 8 when this accident happened. Forced them into financial ruin, and the family broke up. The husband and wife ended up, the pressure led to divorce. You just, in this country, that should not happen. That should not happen.
That should not happen. And so what happens with our Medicaid dollars, even so I was talking about the working poor. These are, let's say it's either a 2-parent or a 1-parent situation. If they want to work, they sometimes hold 1 to 2 to 3 jobs. They're making minimum wage, maybe slightly better. That still is at a very low level. If you're making what we propose to raise the minimum wage to, $15 an hour, that is just slightly over $30,000 a year. And if you have 2 kids at home, one of them gets sick, one of them gets devastatingly sick, mom can't work, she can't go to a job, she can't hold on it. You throw in more bureaucratic nonsense by signing up and making them justify getting these benefits, which is always difficult because not everyone has access to a smartphone, a computer, internet. There's so many barriers that why we won't give the benefits that people really should have, and they deserve it. So now she's forced, and if you're in a 2-parent household, and it's usually the woman who steps away, not always, but the woman who steps away from her job to take care of the disabled in the home. And you just nailed it. It's financially devastating. It's emotionally crippling. And then now your cousin, who's probably going to live a normal lifespan, barring any of the complications you get. If you're immobile, there's so many other complications that you can get. And Christopher Reeve, right?
Oh yeah, of course,
He
yeah.
had that, and he had enough money in all the world to be able to get the best care ever.
Right.
And I suspect what he died of was probably a pressure wound that turned septic. And you can have all of the aids, all of the durable medical equipment, the pressure relieving mattresses, and you can still get unlucky, develop a pressure ulcer. And if you, depending on where they are, sometimes you can heal them, sometimes you can't. And then you open up the skin and bacteria just zoom. And people get sick. This is something to think about. People get sick because there's some break in our immune system. We have the skin. It's the Great Wall of China as a barrier. Mm-hmm. You have your GI tract, but you have to get through a very acidic thing to actually get a GI bug. But you have the respiratory tract, and that is where people get sick. It is Sometimes for a lot of people, it's just a cold, but for the immunosuppressed, it is never just a cold. If you are coughing, if you are sniffling, do not be a public health menace. Public health menace to
Mhm.
society. Put on a mask, stay home, recuperate, because what's a cold for you may be life-threatening for somebody else.
Sure, sure. We learned that in the last 5 years, hopefully, if nothing else, right?
I'd like to think we learned that.
I want to talk with you about the expanse of the 35th district. I've mentioned, so I grew up in Cremora, so sort of one side of that district. I actually was a native of the Deerfield area of West Augusta, so right on the Bath County and Highland County borders on the other side of this district, which, Bath and Highland are in this district. I know personally how big this district is because when I was after my family moved and settled in the Cremora area, we would still go visit my grandparents in Deerfield most Sundays, and that's a long drive. I'll say that it's a long drive from Cremora and then you go even further to the expanse of Bath County. You have become familiar with this in the last few months. Um, it's a rural district. There's a lot of beautiful areas, a lot of great vistas, and a lot of expanses of where there are farmland and wide open areas with just a few people living in. This is a challenging district for you, I'm sure, to travel on a regular basis. Talk to me about that part of this and what this has been for you just to learn in the last few months about this area that you're seeking to represent in the General Assembly.
Well, you definitely have described it as so amazingly beautiful. When you go out there, say you are headed out to uh, Warm Springs or Hot Springs out that area. Oh my gosh. And I would never drive it at night. And I would never drive it at night in winter.
Oh, right,
And
right.
uh, and it is beautiful. It has Dalford State Park. And it has the homestead if you're ever lucky enough to be invited there.
Hasn't happened to me yet. In
Now,
53 years yet. It'll happen one day, right? So,
maybe one day, if there's a special deal.
yeah.
Uh, so I don't drive it at night, or there's too many deer. I had, not in Bath County, but I had a very upsetting. I was working late because the hospitals are, every hospital is working on a shoestring. And mine was a little 53-bed hospital. It's actually outside of Ocean City, Maryland. And I took that job. I commuted from here to there because my mother was midway and I would get to see her. And she had, that's a whole other story. But I was out there and I was working late and my shift was supposed to end at 7 and it didn't end until about 9:30 during deer rutting season. And a deer landed on my hood of my little VW convertible. 3 feet more, I would have been, roadkill. And it's very scary. There's all the deer out in Bath and Highland County. But the roads are treacherous. So to drive an ambulance at a reasonable speed, you are 2 hours away from a community hospital. Our community hospitals right here, RMH and Augusta Medical Center, offer amazing services. I mean, there's just a few that you would have to go to UVA for, neurosurgery and a few very esoteric things, but we can handle so much. But you have to get there. And we can decrease the amount of people who have to get there emergently if we take care of problems before they become crises. I mean, if we don't have in place insurance for people to go and get their chronic health issues taken care of, their diabetes, their heart disease, then you will turn it into a crisis and end up being yet another drain on the actual emergent services. So it's expensive. People only see the upfront costs of universal health care or providing it through the ACA, but you have to look at the back end, which will be so much more expensive. And essentially, this is a tax on the poor and the vulnerable.
Mm-hmm.
And we haven't even begun to talk about what Medicaid and Medicaid expansion dollars going away will do to our elderly.
Yeah, I was just thinking too when you mentioned you have to get to the medical centers to be able to get that access to that great health care. Just yesterday, we were reporting here on Augusta Free Press about Augusta Health having to close some of its uh, health centers, one in Buena Vista, one in Churchville,
And one
um,
at Weir's Cave,
and one
right
in
around the
Waiters Cave,
corner.
and right in the district, right? And again, on the periphery of where people, those centers were located well because, people in Churchville, I mean, that could, be a stopping point for the Bath and Highland County people and Deerfield people that I grew up with. Um, the Weir's Cave, again, all those areas in Mount Solon and such that could reach there, and in Buena Vista down. I mean, I don't think that's in your district, but I mean, there's a lot of areas around there that were served well by that. And that's a direct result of the Medicaid cuts in the big ugly bill. Fortunately for now, our rural hospitals are not going to have to close. There are a number in Virginia, 6 in Virginia, that are at risk of having to close because of the impact of the Medicaid cuts. But man, it's still impacting us here, even though our hospitals aren't going to close. We're still feeling the pinch of this.
Oh, we will feel the pinch. Now we're doing more for less, and you have to drive. You think it's only 10 miles, but it's 10 country miles. It's 15
Yeah,
minutes if you're lucky.
yeah,
And then the wait times are longer. You getting in to see a provider, whether it's a physician, a PA, or a nurse practitioner. Who do you get to see? How often? And it is a tax, and it's a delay in care, and delay in care costs. So Augusta Medical Center is doing some amazing things. They have the mobile unit. I was trying to learn more about where it goes and how often, but I couldn't quite get uh, a grasp on that through the websites. I think I need more information on that. But it looks, and what kind of services are they able to provide on the mobile unit? So I wonder if I bet they can do simple X-rays, and I'm sure they can do EKGs because that those are things you can do. And they probably have a laboratory and blood work and all kinds of things. And going to these units will be helpful. But who's paying for it? Medicaid dollars.
right, right.
Augusta Medical Center is pretty amazing. I'm just going to do this little point out. One of the doctors there who's an internist, I won't say his name, but he was my intern when we trained in Baltimore. We run into each other at meetings periodically. That's small world.
Yeah, that's
So,
nice.
but Augusta Medical Center, it does amazing work. I've had to be the advocate for neighbors who've been there, and of course, I see who comes and where and when I was at RMH. I did retire from RMH, Centera RMH now in 2020
Yeah.
during COVID. And COVID's a whole nother broadcast.
Yeah, sure. And never ending probably as well, as far as that
Oh,
goes.
never ending. Well, actually, because of the the legislative orders that are coming out through by way of RFK Jr., I was not able to get my COVID booster, and nor was my immunosuppressed family member able to get the COVID booster because technically we are not 65. So with any luck on September 18th, when they regroup and recoup and reevaluate the situation, I hopefully people will realize that it is the young and everyone else who goes out and about and socializes who picks up the bug, they survive it, and then they spread it to those less able to protect themselves, are vulnerable. Is this done by design? Uh,
Oh gosh, yeah, we don't want to think about that, do we?
well,
Mm.
I'm wondering why, because now that we've got a great grasp on how to get these vaccines, I just want to make sure that it is said by me that mRNA vaccines are not inserted into your DNA. These are our
Yeah, yeah.
mRNA vaccines, which help your DNA code for a small protein that you can see on the virus. It is like holding up a dirty, stinky sock to a hound dog and say, when you sniff this, when you smell this, this is the enemy, attack the enemy. It is just a sock. It is nothing else. And so that your body is prepared and revved and able to attack should it encounter the enemy, which is, in this case, COVID virus. And it can be applied to other viruses. The interesting thing is that you can remember is if you've had other vaccines, I don't know how to put this on airplane mode so people do. Again, you'll have to teach me that Zoom technique.
Yeah.
So the you have memory cells, but they have to be woken up because they're just rummaging around circulation, sleeping. But the memory cells wake up. They go, oh, yeah, I've seen this. Okay, start production. We're going to start the antibodies so that we can protect against this virus. We know how to code for them. What you do is if you introduced that, you stimulate your own DNA to manufacture that teeny tiny little sock. They already are sniffing. Are like, okay, let's get production up. We've got the antibodies. So when the virus it does actually enter the system, or if it enters the system, the antibodies are there to glom onto it, and then they signal all these other systems in your immune system to come attack and kill. It's pretty simple.
We've learned it, and it's so frustrating that you have to. I'm sure as a medical doctor, you have to explain this and say, look, it's not, they're not evil. It's not going to, they're not using that to track people's movements and make them think differently. And because we've got people in charge in the administration now who are anti-vaxxers, who spread these conspiracy theories on basic things that you have to defend and others have to defend basic advances in amazing advances in technology and medical technology that could be so beneficial to us if we just embrace them, but instead a larger than expected proportion of our population doesn't trust any of this because they've been told not to.
And that is so, yes, it's a daily challenge. Sorry. I have a neighbor coming over. I didn't put out the banner. If this, they'll probably come in and join the fun. So, yes, because that discussion you have when people are coming into the hospital, they are having the worst day of their lives. Their family is having the worst day of their lives. And instead of having confidence in their doctors, they have been, doubt and anxiety has been introduced so that they need to know every single detail and how you got there and why you recommend these treatments. And most people have the capacity to understand everything. I just don't always have the time to put them through 4 years of medical school.
Yeah.
But I do want them to know that I take their issues very seriously. And I always take the time, no matter which patient is asking or which family member is asking, so that they understand what's happening and take the anxiety level down, help them understand what is happening and what we can expect from the treatments being offered. It's and that is actually where I'm. My rounds always take 3 times as long as other people's.
I'm not surprised to hear that because it's, and I think we should move because we've been talking for a while. I could talk with you all day, it seems. This has been so educational for me, and I love that. Hopefully, I think the people who've stayed with us as they're, listening or watching, one goal I had with this interview, Jena, was that I wanted people to get to know you, and we're doing that. Your enthusiasm is infectious. I mean, and I say that because not just no pun intended, right? Your enthusiasm is
There's
infectious.
no vaccine for me.
It's a vaccine, yeah, exactly. But I want to get more people to know who you are and get to know you, and I think we've done a great job with that. As we're wrapping up here, what has it been like for you as you've been making the rounds? Okay, so now another no pun intended thing here, but I'm sure you've been out, meeting folks at committee meetings, maybe at county fairs or lawn parties, wherever the case may be. What has it been like for you to interact with, 'cause, you do this every day. I mean, when you're making your rounds in a hospital setting or anything else, but what has it been like for you in this kind of setting to hear from people? Okay, so you're not diagnosing maybe their medical issues, but you're diagnosing their what they want and need out of government that can be better. What have you learned in this process?
Oh, so many things. This has been a huge learning curve for me and very, very exciting. First of all, I've met so many wonderful people and people who want to help and who have already agree in that there are certain provisions that we should all agree that our government should provide. But then I actually meet a lot of people who have not had access to education, or their news sources are directing them to be very distrustful. And to have confidence, because I will take the time to help them understand that I didn't get to this point in my life by trying to put a con over on them. So what I do is, give me 1 second. Here's Joe on Zoom. So, so, what I, so, talking to them and helping them understand that as a physician, I do have a very interesting and educated viewpoint, and I can see not just from the healthcare and with the problems and the medications, the treatments, but all the social barriers. I have to work with, I get to work with social workers on how to make sure when you get home safely and you don't come back. So I have met a lot of people who have very decided opinions that are ingrained from their schooling, their chosen worship, and the news sources that they are consuming. And I do have the ability to see 18 ways of looking at a problem, because there really are often many solutions to something. Well, we don't have to do it this way. We can do it this way. So while I say you don't have to be a Democrat to vote for me, I would like you to consider what I can offer for you to get the services that you need so that your lives improve. Because I think we all deserve that. There are several other issues in our community, as you're aware of, because you're from this area. We have a lot of working poor because we have people who are work in farming. They don't necessarily own the farm. They're laborers. They're in the poultry plants. And they are doing wonderful work. All honest work is good work and deserves a certain amount of compensation. And we as society should undertake to support our workers. And so again, you please think about the issues that are important and decide what you want. I think affordable housing. Why should our teachers, our firefighters, not be able to afford a home? Do you remember my favorite movie, It's a Wonderful Life? Mm-hmm. And George Bailey's having that discussion with Mr. Potter. And he goes, wait for what? Till they're old and so decrepit and their children have left them to have 2 decent rooms and a bath? No, we should have, and we can do it in Virginia, programs that help home buyers at a certain income level. And we should have the homes that are affordable for them, that are not so horrible that they can't be run, because there's a certain amount of maintenance and utilities to get. And in our day of information age, broadband should be considered a utility. You cannot get around without having access to it. And that is another learning curve for me. I have become much better at digital. I got on this Zoom call after the 3rd attempt.
That's right. You're exact. The broadband thing, growing up in the trailer park in Cremora, back in the 80s, my access I lived 20 miles from the county library. There was a bookmobile that would come every so often, right?
Joy, rapture.
Oh my gosh.
right?
And then sometime in the mid 80s, the bookmobile funding went away and even the bookmobile wasn't there. That felt like we had broadband and then we didn't have it. So I mean, yeah, and if you live in the 35th district and you do. I mean, if you don't live in the city of Stanton or Waynesboro, Harrisonburg, you live in a rural area. That broadband is essential to you and to your kids for their education. There's no doubt about that.
So for your education and for you to be able to participate in every other form of commerce, whether it's government or making your lives better.
Yeah.
So I do think it, and just because there's no actual profit from getting broadband out to Bath County or Highland County, it's absolutely essential.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's cheaper in the long run, so we should provide it. And we have ways here in Virginia, which is a whole nother topic, but there are lots of ways of obtaining the funds to cover these services without raising the tax on the workers. And it's not just taxing corporations, although that does come into it, but there are many other economic and job creating opportunities that we could explore. There's so much that we could do if we would allow ourselves to open it up. Clean energy, a whole nother topic, right? Do you know in Germany, they have solar panels as sound barriers on their major highways.
Mm, hmm
I mean, green roofs on any new construction.
hmm
I just read about this amazing solar panel that doesn't even need the metals that are the heavy metals that are so hard to find, that you can do it so much cheaper. And protecting Virginia's beauty and getting the better. I mean, I grew up when the Chesapeake Bay was at death's door, and because of all of the measures undertaken by the EPA and upstream to get it clean, the clean tributaries downstream, the Chesapeake's coming back. I mean, it's not there yet. We don't want to ignore it, and we
Right.
certainly don't want to go back to that. I remember seeing, we as kids, we would go along the road, Schultz Road, which is a very dangerous road. My mother should never have let us do it, but we did, and pick up aluminum cans, and we would take them in to earn money. But we were cleaning.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I've learned as a adult when I started as a journalist in my early 20s that the waterways here feed into the Chesapeake Bay. I didn't necessarily know that as a young kid growing up that the South River that went behind my elementary school, Cromwell Elementary School, fed into the Chesapeake Bay. But I mean, the waterway right behind your house there does the same thing. And so, yeah, it's all connected. It's all connected.
And I like clean air, clean water, clean soil, because we stay healthier that way. In Guatemala, remember I said we could throw antibiotics and vitamins at uh, the citizens there, but if you don't get them a clean water source,
Yeah.
what are you doing?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
clean water.
Well, and it's and, as I keep saying, we're getting ready to conclude. Universal health care could make everybody more productive.
Definitely.
We can certainly make clean energy our next growth industry, and
We
also
could.
make the world a better place. I mean, equal rights for women, for minorities, for LGBTQs can make us all more productive. It could all go together.
Oh
It can
my
make us
goodness.
all better off.
If you ever wanted to do this again, I could tell you, every fertilized zygote is undifferentiated sexually up until 6 weeks. So that is a whole continuum that's so interesting that people, I hope, can be able to appreciate. I want to make sure I help everyone understand that I support everyone's right to practice their religion as they see fit, as long as it doesn't infringe on the rights of others. But I definitely do not think, I definitely agree with our founding fathers that there should be a separation of church and state. But I do support everyone's right to practice their religion the way they see fit. So
That's
again,
yeah, that's fair. Yeah, I mean, I'm the same way. Whatever makes you a better person, makes you a better person in that sense. So,
mhm. Oh,
um,
did
go
you
ahead.
ever take Mrs. Ross's anthropology class?
No, I know you have a degree in anthropology from UVA, right? I
And
never took it.
economics.
See, I never took an anthropology. I took some economics, the low level economics classes. Never took anthropology. I regret that now. Um,
Oh, it's fun.
yeah, I took my degree was in American government with at first I was foreign policy, and then I realized I'm not sure if I want. I mean, I wanted to live here and make this place a better place. So I'm not going to do much with foreign policy. So I went back to American government. But yeah, never anthropology. That's the one thing. Sociology and all those fun things, but never anthropology. So apparently I got to do some reading here. It seems like.
Oh, yeah, you should see my book list. Well, that's another one.
We'll have to share some book lists. That's what we'll do that. We'll do that coming up. I have had
Yes, please.
Gina, I have had the fortune to interview, I mean, the luck in my life to interview senators and governors and people running for president.
Oh, I
I
thought you were
am
going to talk
not
about me.
I'm not BSing you here when I say this has been my most favorite interview with someone running for public office by far because you are not all those other people I talk with, nothing against them, any of them, but there's canned answers, there's I'm thinking about the PR in my head. I don't This has been an authentic, we're talking with a person who gets it interview. Your enthusiasm is so, God, just love it. Let's do this again. Well,
Tell me what you want to talk about. I mean, I have thoughts on it.
I'm sure.
So,
Well, hey, me too. That's the danger. Uh, well, Jena Crisler, candidate for the House District 35 seat in the Virginia House of Delegates. This has been a pleasure. Thank you so much for your time.
early voting begins September 19th
Yes.
and election day November 4th. And the thing to remember is your delegates do make a difference in Richmond, and we can, especially if we can all work together. Thank you. It's so nice to meet you.
So nice to meet you as well.